Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about why I'm not a fan of body part splits, and why they can be overly restrictive for no benefit, and why they're really kind of based upon some false ideas, and that in some cases they can actually slow down your progress in the amount of muscle you gain. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Now, a lot of people say, Jason, I like body part splits. This pro bodybuilder has done them. This person, that person has done them. The question I would ask you is, are you that pro bodybuilder? And I'm not going to say the stupid line that everyone is different, but I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you probably don't have that pro bodybuilder's genetics, and you probably can't afford his drug stack, and you might not even want to put his drug stack into your body. What you need to understand is that drugs in the genetically elite for muscle growth totally changed the rules. So just because something worked for them, someone who's on 2 grams of gear every week, 2 grams of testosterone, a bunch of growth hormone, IGF-1, who is also very genetically gifted for gaining muscle, I wouldn't go out on a limb and assume that what he did is going to work for you. Furthermore, I think it's fair to say when you're dealing with people like that, how they train probably isn't that big of a deal, because generally they're genetically blessed enough and on enough drugs that any form of training is probably going to give them amazing results. Okay, they could train 15 different ways and probably still get very, very similar results using all sorts of different philosophies and not see any difference at all. I wouldn't base anything on that. Now, the problem with body part splits is the reason people actually do them. Everyone who does them, they say what? It's either to relieve boredom, because they don't want to do the same thing all the time, which I covered the other day, but it's to focus. They want to focus on stimulating maximum muscle growth in one area of the body or one exercise, right? Well, here's the problem with that. I'm going to get into muscle protein synthesis in a minute, but here's the problem. When's the last time when you wanted to focus on getting better at something, anything else in life that involved your body adapting to something? Did you ever come and do it for an hour, really hard once a week, and then take 6 days off from doing it? I want people to seriously think about that. Is there any other skill? Because all those skills involve growing muscle and everything. You realize writing and typing actually involve muscle growth in your hands and fingers. Playing guitar involves muscle growth in your fingers. It involves motor skills and making muscles adapt. Muscles, connective tissue, everything, they adapt, right? So if you wanted to get better at playing the guitar, or typing, or throwing a football, or swinging a baseball bat, swinging a golf club, would you come in and do it for an hour or 2 hours once a week and then not touch it again for 6 days? Would you do that with any other skill? How about learning to run? Do you really think that that's the best way to get better at anything? Of course not. This is the only physical activity in the world that anyone has postulated this and done this. The only physical activity ever invented where people have come up with this insane idea. And the only reason people get away with it is because they're at least training some, they're stimulating some, and they see a bunch of people who are really successful at it who use a bunch of drugs that grow muscle independently of their training. All right, and that is a documented medical fact. Anabolics cause muscle growth even for people who don't lift. People who are in bed, bedridden, and can't even get out of bed gain 20, 30 pounds of muscle on drugs, who are like can't move, can't walk. That's really common in a hospital. Like in the ICU and the burn ward and stuff, people who are immobilized gaining 30 pounds of solid muscle without even being able to lift a finger. Okay? So people are taking these substances. Well, of course they're growing muscle. But any other physical activity, you'd be doing it all the time, 3-4 times a week, maybe every day, maybe twice a day. Well, you know what? All the studies we have generally shown something interesting. When the amount of training volume you do per week is equal, like a given number of work is done for any muscle or exercise throughout the week, we know one of the most important factors is weekly tonnage. But when that weekly tonnage is spread over more days, people usually gain more muscle. In other words, if you moved on the bench press or the curl so many hundreds of pounds per week, if you spread it out over 3 days, you'll gain more muscle than if you did all of it in one day. There's even been some studies showing if you spread it over 5 or 6 days instead of lumping it into 3, they gained more muscle. There was one study that showed that already, the Norwegian powerlifting experiment. You guys remember that? Why? Because muscles only grow for 1 to 2 days after you train them. In other words, no matter how hard you train a muscle, even if you came in and did Rich Piana's 8-hour arm workout, your biceps and your triceps will stop growing within the 48-hour mark. That is the absolute most they will grow. Usually it'll be less than that. So in 2 days or less, you're not going to grow any further from that training because muscle protein synthesis returns to normal. In fact, part of the recovery process limits growth itself. So sometimes while you're in the early stages of the recovery phase, you don't grow at all. So if you push a muscle too hard and too short of a time, it isn't going to always grow as much because it spent more of its growth window, that up to 2 days, recovering and not growing. And then it grows and adapts after. So actually what you find is that if that same amount of work is spread out over more days, instead of 10,000 pounds on this day, 3,300 pounds is lifted over 3 days, you usually gain a little bit more muscle mass. Not a lot more, but it's a little more. But that's when volume is equal. Anyone consider how much more volume you can do when you do them in the same day? And here's what I mean. If you come in and take any exercise, row, bench press, squat, I don't care, pick one. If you came in and tried to, let's say you wanted to do 15 sets per week on that exercise, and you come in and you work with whatever, 200 pounds, 300 pounds, whatever it is you're doing for your work sets, and you were to do 15 sets in 1 day, are you going to do as much tonnage as if you had done 5 sets over 3 days? Meaning, you could probably lift that 200 pounds. Let's say you do all 15 sets in 1 day with that 200 pounds. And let's say you can only complete 8 rep sets and actually get to 15. You might find you could do 10 rep sets or 12 rep sets if you only did 5. Or you do that for the first 5 and then you start having to drop reps. Or you've got to reduce weight. Why? Because you're getting fatigued. You're doing less work. If you do spread that over 3 days and you do 5 sets, your 15 sets will probably equal a lot more tonnage than if you did them in 1 day. So now you're not only training more frequently and getting more muscle protein synthesis uptime, you're doing more work. More work usually equals more growth also, up to a certain threshold. So just from a growth potential, you have more. Number 2, when you split things up, people tend to focus less on more effective exercises. Right? You end up having to spend more time in the gym to stimulate the same amount of muscle growth. Right? Why? Because if you're coming in and training your full body, people know they're only going to be able to be in the gym so long. It'd be an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, maybe. Some cases 30, 45 minutes, that's going to be your workout time. You have to pick big exercises that are very effective, that work a lot of muscle groups for most of your lifts in order to get a full body workout done and get a reasonable workload in a limited time period. And because you're rotating through different muscles, it's not that hard to bench press after you squat and deadlift. You can switch to other muscle groups and still have good strength in different compound movements. You can end up doing a lot more tonnage and work in one workout. When people do body part splits, they tend to do 1, maybe 2 compounds, if that, and then they start going to little easier exercises because they're tired. Those muscles are fatigued. They're going to flies. They're going to tricep extensions. They're not going to keep pressing. Those exercises build less total muscle. You have to remember, it's the cumulative fatigue that you subject a muscle to over the course of a week. Well, if you're having to, because you're getting tired on all the exercises you're doing, go to these little smaller exercises, every set that you're doing is stimulating less growth. In other words, bench pressing or weighted dips put more overall muscle on your body, more gains, than flies and tricep extensions, because they're working multiple big muscles. But people are having to go to that because those muscles are too fatigued to keep doing the big compounds. So they go to less effective exercises. Therefore, to stimulate enough muscle growth, people spend more time in the gym. They end up having to do more total sets. The other advantage there is, of course, when you're doing the full body stuff, you can still work on weak points. You could do isolation movements for your weak points. But you know what? There's no need to isolate every muscle in your body. Isolation movements are there to correct imbalances. Certain muscles are lagging behind or they need extra work you throw in an isolation movement. But your whole body doesn't need extra work if you're doing 5 different big compounds. Most of your muscles are getting worked effectively. You might have 1 or 2, maybe your biceps, maybe your side delts, maybe your hamstrings aren't getting enough work, so you could isolate the weak points. Also have the advantage of if something is lagging behind, you just need a specialized day. You just need to do it first. If your chest is lagging, bench press or do dips before you do your squats or deadlifts or whatever else you're doing, right? While you're fresh, it'll get more stimulation. Simple solution. The other thing is, it puts people into dogmatic stuff. Again, people tend to remove the more effective exercises when they split their body up because they get caught in the mindset it's back day, it's back and bicep day, or it's arm day. They don't do some closed grip bench presses for their triceps the whole time, or dips or overhead pressing. They'll go to a bunch of curls. They won't do more chin-ups for their biceps. They'll just go do a bunch of cable curls. It'll end up being that instead of the exercises that put the most muscle on you. People tend to do the less effective exercises, and they remove the big ones because they get confused. People maybe don't want a deadlift because they don't know, is it a back exercise or a leg exercise? So they'll be, I'll just do rack pulls instead. Less effective exercise for putting overall muscle on you. People might not do standing presses or push presses, an amazing leg, core, shoulder, tricep, chest exercise, an amazing exercise, one of the most effective exercises ever created. Most strength and conditioning coaches love the push press. It puts so much size and strength on athletes. They'll go do a seated press. Then they only get half the benefit because it's shoulder day. See the problem here? This is the problem. People get caught up in a dogmatic thing of saying, well, you know I have weak points. I know I need to do more big full body stuff, but I can't because I'm limited. It's arm day. It's back day. And then what happens to their weak points? If something is a weak point for you, then shouldn't you be training it every time you're in the gym? Of course you should. But when you get caught up in the idea of splitting your body up because of organizational patterns in your brain, you don't come work on your weakest links every day. And if you're training full body instead of a split, you can focus on your weakness every day. If your chest is lagging, you could come in and do weighted dips at the start of every single workout. Because you don't have to worry about, is it chest and tricep day? You know that your chest needs more work. Your chest is lagging. You can focus on it more by doing dips at the start of every single workout. You come in and you train. You can train your body in order of priority. Whatever's the most important to you, you can do first. Whether it's a specific exercise because you're an athlete who needs that exercise, or you're someone who wants to reshape their body, you can just do whatever's most important to you first in the workout so that it gets the most effort put into it. But you come in and train. You don't worry about, man, which training day is it on my split? Is it my upper or lower day? Is it my chest day or my back day? You can come in and focus upon what's most important to you, and your most important or your weak links you can train first every time you're in the gym without concern for what day it is. The whole idea of splitting your body up is dogmatic for no reason. In fact, it doesn't focus upon things. People are like, I do that so I can focus on that body part. Well, if you wanted to focus on that body part, wouldn't you train it every time you're in the gym? Wouldn't you give it the most priority? Body part splits remove focus from a body part. They don't let you grow anything as fast as it possibly could, and they sure don't let you catch your weak links up as quickly as you could, right? Because if your weakness is overhead pressing or your shoulders and triceps, you should probably overhead press at the start of every workout. Fix that real quick. But split routines don't really allow for that, do they? They're dogmatic and restrictive for no reason other than because some pro bodybuilder did it, who's on 5 grams of gear and might have a myostatin deficiency, so he gains muscle doing jumping jacks. Well, who gives a shit? Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.